Calvin Ridley, the big name everybody talked about heading into free agency after all the other big names everybody was talking about stayed with their own teams. Patriots obviously missed out. He gets a 4-year, $96 million deal from the Tennessee Titans. Patriots offer was reportedly in the 4 years, $90 million range. I'll be honest, Paul, I don't mind missing out on Calvin Ridley. As somebody who has been pretty vocal that I'm disappointed with the lack of an action, this one doesn't bother me simply because would I have taken Calvin Ridley on the Patriots? Yes. When you get to that price range, though, at a certain point, I'm looking at him saying, we're giving Calvin Ridley $20 million a year, it was like $25, $26 million a year. I'm looking at that and saying, all right, I can do this, or I can just throw $2 million a year on it and go get T. Higgins. And if that's where the market's going to be, I'll take the substantially better player. So I know they don't have T. Higgins, so it's kind of weird to let him off the hook for it, but it's like, I don't know how much Calvin Ridley would have helped big picture. He would have been a good bridge option. I still think wide receiver would have been a major need this year. I still think wide receiver would have been a major need next year. There are misses that bothered me much more than them missing on Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to frame it the way you did, I would agree. I would rather have T. Higgins, but I am disappointed that they didn't get Calvin Ridley. I think that at some point you have to start to find a way to improve your roster. You need to get good. I know this is going to sound really revolutionary. You need to get good players on your roster, yes, and you need to try to help the young quarterback that you get, as opposed to just saying, well, why should we bring in Calvin Ridley? What's he going to do? How's he going to improve the team? And I've heard that a lot over the last couple of days. Ironically, I didn't hear it very much over the first couple of days of the week before he had signed with anybody. The tune changed. In terms of the money, to me, $23 million a year. Yeah, he's going to be. I think he comes in as the 10th highest paid receiver or something like that, according to Over the Cap. That's going to change. I mean, there's a handful of guys, a half dozen guys that are going to blow him out of the water. You already mentioned T. Higgins and Brandon Ayuk and those kinds of guys.
Jefferson.
Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb. I mean, these are all guys that are going to make that contract look like nothing. Probably over the next 6 months. So I don't really think that was going way, above and beyond. I think that was, when you're a bad team in free agency, you're probably going to have to outbid some teams. I would have liked to have seen them done that, and we talked a lot about the guys they did.
So you would have gone to the offer. You would have started continuing to bid against the Titans.
Yeah, I would have. I would have given it a shot. Yeah, and like I said in the first segment before break. I also, and I haven't seen it all, and if it's out there and I've missed it, I apologize. It's 8:24 on a Sunday morning. I haven't seen the details of what the Patriots offered. I mean, I've seen it was competitive. I've seen 4 years, $90 million range. Yeah, okay. Well, I saw that Tennessee had $50 million guaranteed. Did the Patriots have $50 million guaranteed, or was it a Patriots guarantee where you get a lot of money tied up in per game roster bonuses and incentives, and it's not really a guarantee if you're not playing every game. So I'm always of the belief that if you get good players and you want to tie it all up into incentives, like I really don't understand why that would be a sticking point for you. You want the guy to play well. So in other words, you want that guy to get that money.
Right.
But then you want to have your cake and eat it too. And if he doesn't get that, I just feel like at some point, if you want the player, you have to go after the player. And I think right now the Patriots are in a tough spot coming off a 4-13 season with no answers at quarterback. I don't think you can. If things are equal, you're not going to get very many guys to come. And I want to say one quick thing about the money. And this is very simplistic, and it's probably not accurate. And I got ripped during the week when I did this on Patriots Unfiltered. The one guy they brought back that I wasn't really thrilled about was Kendrick Bourne.
Okay.
Coming off the torn ACL, it's not an overly abundant contract, but you give him a few million. Might those few million have been able to tip the scales and get you Calvin Ridley? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It's probably too simplistic. He probably wasn't coming here. There are a lot of things that Tennessee had with the taxes and all the other nonsense. Maybe that's what he was. It is a little closer to home. Nashville is not as far for something that I guess reportedly was important to him with his family life. I don't know. I just feel like if you're in it, you should fight all the way to the end, and at least that would be one thing. And this is the Alex Barth theory.
Yeah.
One thing that you didn't necessarily have to have. You're going to still take a wide receiver or two in the draft, but you didn't have to prioritize it. Now you have so many priorities that you can't address them all.
So how you just closed there, and by the way, the only update on Ridley's contract, Mike Reese this morning just had the Patriots were aggressive with their pitch, whatever that's open to interpretation, obviously. What you just said is actually why missing on Ridley doesn't bother me as much as missing on some other guys, because it is a really good wide receiver draft, and there are going to be guys that go on day 2 this year that would be a first-round pick most years. So I look at it, and meanwhile, yes, it's a good top of the tackle class. Once you get past like pick 50, that thing drops way off. And you're talking about just project players. You're talking about guys that forget day 1 starters. You're talking about guys who probably aren't year 1 starters. So I look at Jonah Williams, who got $30 million over 2 years, 20
another
guaranteed.
guy that bothers me that they weren't in on.
I look at Tyron Smith, who, yes, he's older and has been banged up, but again, you check that box for this year, and now you can kind of accept just taking one of those project tackles and trying to get your future wide receiver at pick 34, or even trading up late into the first round. You can use that asset. That's why Calvin Ridley doesn't bother me as much. I think that contract's going to end up being disappointing. And look, it's the price doing business. Sometimes you have to sign bad contracts. I get that. But all things considered, I would rather Jonah Williams kind of be okay as a bridge tackle, and you can go out, you can get a great wide receiver, you get a tackle next year, than be tied into Calvin Ridley for 4 years, being so-so. You end up missing on receiver in this draft because you have all the money tied up in him and playing time tied up in him. And then you still have to deal with a tackle class that's lesser than. That's not to let him off the hook for missing on Ridley, but just if they sign Ridley, I think there's still a lot of complications in their draft, strategy. Having a starting left tackle makes everything so much easier to me in terms of the plan moving forward, more so than having a guy like Calvin Ridley does. And if this is a big picture, long-term thing, even though Jonah Williams is not a long-term player, I feel like having him on the roster in 2024 heading into the draft makes it easier to address those long-term issues in the draft. So I'm more bothered by like Jonah
I'm
Williams.
with you on the tackle. I'm with you on Jonah Williams too, specifically on that one player, because I do think he would have made sense. My knee-jerk thing would have been, why not both? They have all this money to burn.
Of course.
Gerard Mayo told us they had cash to burn, money to burn, ready to go. And so far it's not been anything like that. And the other thing, real quick, one of the criticisms that I've heard about Ridley, again, after they didn't get him, was, well, what good is he going to do? Even if he hits and you get a really good player out of it, he will not be here when you're really good again. To which I say, he's 29 years old. He won't be here when you're good again, but Hunter Henry will be at 29 years old. Like, no, you signed Hunter Henry because you have no tight ends. He's a good, solid tight end. You keep guys like that. Like, at some point, again, you have to find a way to improve the talent level of your roster.
And I would just put on top of that, he won't be here, but the quarterback you draft will be. And putting talent around the quarterback when he's young helps with his development.
Exactly.
We should have all just learned this lesson. Speaking of, the one other guy, and this one bothered me a little bit, was Keenan Allen for a 4th-round pick. I know he's older, and that scared a lot of people. For 1 year, and I get it's a big cap hit. Again, they can afford it. There is not a more quarterback-friendly receiver in the league than Keenan Allen. What a guy for a young quarterback to have. I would have loved for them to have been in on that, especially after missing out on Ridley. Mike Williams, I could take. I don't love the idea that your top 2 receivers are both coming off torn ACLs. That scares me, and maybe it doesn't matter in the big picture of where his team's going, but missing on Keenan Allen hurt for
I don't
me as
like
well.
the idea that Kendrick Bourne might be in the picture to be one of your top 2 receivers.
See, I'll say this. I think Kendrick Bourne, and we'll see where's that coming off the knee. I think Kendrick Bourne's a very underrated player.
I think he's fine. I think there's a million Kendrick Bournes in that league.
I don't think he's one of one, but I don't think there's a million either. He's somewhere in between.
I just feel like if you really want to improve your wide receiver room, then you need to do it. You need to sign players that are above that. And so far, it's a week. I'm not going to get lost. There's a lot of stuff that can happen between now and the draft. The Mike Williams thing, I would tend to agree. The only thing about him, I know Evan probably talks about this with you a lot, just the specific skill set that he has is something they don't really have. A guy that can operate outside the numbers as a true,
Right.
X, receiver. They don't really have that, and he is that. He's, is a hell of a lot better than Devontae Parker,
Right.
on the outside. And
How about Devontae Parker signing like immediately after he got cut?
yeah, that was strange. That was strange. Philadelphia may or may not have been involved with tampering with somebody else, right? Saquon Barkley.
Makes think.
Yeah. I wonder how that all came together so quickly.